remember the famous dialogue from the movie Three Idiots, all is well. So this is what the government is trying to focus upon in terms of economy and saying all is well, don't worry. These things are going well. This is where the employment is rising, this industry is rising, and so on. But day by day, we find that the numbers are no longer something which can be hidden, and the truth will be revealed soon. So we find share market is collapsing, manufacturing sector is facing issues, global supply chain links have been disturbed because of Donald Trump's tariff regime. India is facing difficulties in terms of whether a tariff should be levied or shouldn't be levied on the particular US product. Agricultural sector growth is increasing. In fact, in comparison to other sectors, that means employment is rising in those areas which probably can be considered as the one which require unskilled workforce. So skilled workforce is missing, and so many things. There are so many things that we find are creating havoc. But today, our topic, what we're going to discuss on Commerce GYAN is basically connected to the manufacturing sector of India. Now, many people say that the manufacturing sector is doing quite fine. I mean, even certain government figures that are stating that, okay, everything is fine in this particular region, in this particular area. But if you see certain facts, you yourself can decide whether the manufacturing sector is on a decline, is going to face difficulties, or it is on an upward trend. You look for yourself and see the facts what I'm going to disclose here. So look at the facts, and it's up to you to decide what is actually going on in the Indian economy. The essential thing that we can see here is about the February figures that have been given related to the manufacturing sector. Now we see that this sector faced a 14-month low. And what is the reason? There is low demand in raw material, there's low demand in the production also, which is due to the falling sales in many of the cases. Now, what is the reality of Make in India and manufacturing since the year 2014? We are going to now look at it. So let us look at a very essential thing, which was a concept developed by this particular government in terms of Make in India and manufacturing since the year 2014. So let's have a look at what is happening. 2014, the Make in India was launched by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and then goal was to increase India's GDP from 14 to 25% and create nearly 1 crore jobs. Now, what has actually happened? Let's see. Take a look at it. India's manufacturing share remains the same today. That means it was in 2013-14, it was something around 17.3%, and the same rate today also exists. Then secondly, we find there is no increase in the export share. Okay, so the proportionate share of export that should have increased, it's not. Instead, it has fallen. So the share of exports that is happening in our country is declined from 25.2% to 22.7%. So we find that there is a substantial decline in exports. Then another important thing is we have a clear understanding now that there is unemployment which is existing in India, and specifically there are freebies which are given off for election campaigning, but the employment generation opportunities are not much which should have been created. Then secondly, if we find the share of agricultural sector in the GDP has increased, indicating reversal of the structural formation. So the structural formation in India, if you see the US agricultural sector, it occupies a very small proportion of the GDP. But in India, it is occupying a large proportion of the GDP since the beginning. But now, in fact, when the time should have come when it should have gone down, manufacturing and IT and service industry, the GDP share should have gone up. Instead of that, what is happening? The agricultural share is increasing, showing that there is a decline in other areas, that is manufacturing, service sector, and other sectors which should have contributed to the GDP are no longer contributing. Then another important thing that we can see is there is unstable regulatory policies which have pushed the manufacturing industries into places which are like Vietnam and China. So industries which wanted to come to India have been pushed. Instead of to India, it has been pushed to Vietnam and China, where they are having a welcome gesture with easy policies and you can say a very stable formation of the tax system and other aspects. So infrastructure is good, taxation policies are stable, regulatory norms are clear cut, right? Today we find GST, what has happened? There are so many amendments since inception, nobody can deny. So basically, GST has become a big chaos since 2017. So in a country where you don't have a stable tax regime, one day you say it is 18%, another day you say it is 5%, another time period you say it is 28%, it becomes really difficult for an industry to survive. Even the policies, even land acquisition, even infrastructure is not good for a sustainable manufacturing system. So obvious shift is going to happen from India to countries which offer these facilities to the companies. FDI flows. Now, people often say that, okay, FDI is increasing, people have started investing in India. No, the FDI flows have reduced in India by nearly 43%, which is alarming. Then we had a scheme very nicely designed, right, of $23 billion that was launched by this particular government, where we find this was a PLI scheme introduced in 2020 to boost the manufacturing by nearly 25% by 2025. So we are in 2025 where the boost should have happened, and manufacturing should have actually increased by 25%. Now this was done with as a competition to China. That means China pay, now we don't want to depend too much on China now. We want to make everything in India. Excellent. It was something which was designed with a very nice objective of non-dependence on the Chinese products. But what has happened? Only 37% of the production target was met, and only 1.73 billion out of this entire project have been distributed as incentives. So where is $23 billion and where is $1.73 billion? So look at the huge difference. And today, what has happened to the scheme? The scheme has lapsed. This is what is being said about the scheme. Official announcement have not been made, but the scheme seems to have been lapsed because there is no more sanctioning and nothing is going on around this. So companies like these, Apple, Samsung, Nokia, LG Electronics, Foxconn, are choosing Vietnam. So all these companies are moving to countries other than India. So when you question this particular thing that is going on in the manufacturing sector, people often say, China is really good. I mean, China has so much of infrastructure. They have a baseline. They have a stable government. They don't have democracy like us. They don't have many, you can say, political parties to create chaos and all that. That is what they're saying. And that's why we have lower manufacturing in India. Why blame China when actually there are so many issues that can be resolved at our end to fix the manufacturing sector? So this is a very important question that in India this should have been asked long back, and work should have been done on this particular part of low manufacturing in India. Infrastructure specifically is poor now. Currently, you must have read in the newspapers that because of certain freebie schemes like going on during the election campaigning, lots of funds are going towards those schemes, and basically what is happening to the infrastructure projects. In fact, there was news about even, let's say, a city like Pune, where infrastructure projects were sanctioned to a certain number of crores, but only 10% of it is actually being paid off. So if infrastructure schemes, the sanction was of, let's say, 3,000 crore rupees, only 3 crores have been given away. Why? Because the funds have been diverted to freebies. So if infrastructure is not good, if roads are not good, transportation is not possible, if your electricity is not consistent, we have some still, even in the cities, we have power cuts. Then we also find that water supply is not consistent. So if all these facilities still, after so many years of independence, we are facing difficulties, and not just difficulties, we are finding increasing amount of difficulties in the last few years. So if this is happening, then there is a lot of work that should be done in the manufacturing sector for encouragement, specifically now in connection to taxation. Though the company tax rates have been lowered, what has happened? The policy framework is not clear. That means if you talk about law, there is so much of dispute that can happen even in one para of the law. So Income Tax Act, GST Act, there are so many local acts which are existing, labor laws, all these are not streamlined, and new policies have been framed without actually finding whether these are feasible and possibly implementable at the actual ground level. So let's say because of the Trump tariffs, we are actually in a good position to shift the manufacturing operations of other companies from countries like even USA, China, and Vietnam, and other countries from Europe also, where the tariff war is going on and where issues are going on. But if we have to shift those companies to India, are we in a position to provide them good infrastructure, stable policies, stable government rules, no bureaucracy, and no issues connected to the quick registration and processes? If we see a simple registration like GST in the past few months, and let's say since the past 1.5 year, it is becoming so much complicated. Whereas in the beginning, it was just kept for a 7-day to 15 days period used to get the GST registered. So today, there are so many issues in the basic GST registration process. Biometric verification has to be done, and so many problems. I mean, hurdles have been created for even simple registrations. So instead of making simplified taxation system, simplified methodology, things are becoming more and more complicated. And so it's not just a discouragement for companies abroad to shift to India, it is also a discouragement for people in India to start or get into manufacturing. So basically, even though there are incentives, even though there are schemes framed, but the implementation is not happening. And we find that the manufacturing sector is suffering day by day. And if this keeps happening, then you know what the state of India will be, because economy requires manufacturing for the smooth operations. We could have been in a much better position if there was a focus on economy and manufacturing in the past few years, but it has not happened. And so if at all we have to look at the manufacturing sector in India, we find definitely there is a lot of work to be done, and there is a lot of decline in the past few years. So production, supply chain management, and everything is facing difficulties. So if this goes ahead in the same rate, we are definitely on a verge of economic slowdown. So this is the point when India, this is the spot, this is the point where we can say we have two ways to go. Either we move towards a better manufacturing sector and better India, or we move towards a poor manufacturing sector and a poor and a economically backward country. So this entirely depends on the decisions that the government will be taking towards the manufacturing sector. And if it takes wrong decisions, definitely recession is something, and problems and slowdown in the economy is something which we can expect. So let's hope for the best and let's see how things turn out in the future.